All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Steven Rivas. I'm the product manager here at WIN-911. Today, we're going to be talking about our newest data source for InTouch, our Wonderware InTouch ME. We'll start off by doing a quick overview of the product itself, WIN-911 as a whole, and then we'll go ahead and do a live demo. During the presentation, if you have any questions, you'll notice there is a questions section in the GoToWebinar box, so feel free to ask your questions there. We don't have a moderator today, so I'll get to your questions toward the end or at the end during the Q&A session. So with that, let's get started. If any of you guys aren't familiar with WIN-911, we are alarm notification software, and what we specialize in is grabbing alarms as they're configured within your SCADA system and sending them to operators through various notification methods with advanced escalation. So what are some of the what value can WIN-911 add to your existing InTouch ME application? I would say primarily would be alarm delivery to the right person or alarm escalation. If you have a fairly big InTouch ME configuration, then chances are all your alarms don't need to go to the same people every single time. So WIN-911 will allow you to create alarm subscriptions that pull certain alarms out of your system and escalate them to different sets of people or different groups of people. 24/7 operations. If you have a system that you can't have a person there watching it all the time, well, you can have WIN-911 watch it all the time overnight. If there's an alarm situation, you can have WIN-911 send those alarms out to whoever needs to know about it any time of day. So you can use scheduling to make sure that you're monitoring the system all the time. And kind of an expansion on that, alarm notification beyond the control room. Obviously, if you're doing alarm notification, you're expanding the view of your alarms within InTouch ME. So you can take those alarms again as they're configured within your InTouch ME application and send them to whoever you need to through a variety of different notification methods that we'll talk about in a little bit. So what industries is WIN-911 applicable to? I would say all of these. We got our start in, or made our name in water, wastewater industry, and a lot of our customers think we're only applicable to that industry, but that's certainly not the case. Our second, third biggest markets are oil and gas and pharmaceutical. But if you have an automated SCADA system using InTouch ME, then we're in any of these industries. We're certainly applicable to any of those. So if you are in any one of these industries, I believe WIN-911 can help you out there. So what we'll go ahead and do now is talk about what we think the typical notification process looks like now without an alarm notification system like WIN-911. So if you have a InTouch ME application, when an alarm becomes active, you need to figure out who you need to send it to. So if you have a person whose job it is to monitor the control room, they see an alarm, they need to notify someone about it, they need to figure out who it is that needs to be notified of the alarm, they need to check to see if that person's available, are they working today, or are they actually on site, and once they figure out if they can, who they're going to send the alarm to and whether they're available, they need to figure out how they're going to send the alarm out. Is it going to be a voice call, a pager, a mobile notification? And then they go ahead and notify that person and wait for them to respond. And if they do respond, or rather if they don't respond, then they repeat that whole process again until someone responds and takes care of the issue. If they do respond, obviously you get your issue resolved. With WIN-911, we've taken that entire process and automated it, or allow you to automate it through our configuration. So now when an alarm occurs, it goes into WIN-911. WIN-911 handles all of those details for you, and make sure we notify the right person at the right time, or the right person as quickly as possible to make sure your issue is resolved. And we do that, or how we do that is with the various modules. So WIN-911 is a modular system. Those modules work together in concert to make alarm notification possible. The first type of module that we have would be a data source module. That is what our InTouch ME data source module is. Its sole responsibility is to connect to an InTouch ME project and get access to alarm information and tag information. Once it has alarms, it sends it to our dispatcher module. The dispatcher module is the central piece to everything, or the central escalation engine. And once the dispatcher figures out who needs to be notified, it sends that alarm to the appropriate notifier, which then sends the alarm to the operator that needs to know about it. That operator can then view the alarm and respond to it as needed. So another view into this process looks a little bit like this. If you have Wonderware InTouch ME, our InTouch ME data source connects to it. When an alarm goes off, it sends it to our dispatcher. The dispatcher is going to send it to our notification modules, or notifiers as we call them, and those notifier modules then send it on to the operator that has been configured to receive it. We also have a reporting module which allows your operators to request alarm data and report data at any time that they need it. Maybe you have an operator coming on shift and he wants to see which alarms are active right when he comes on shift. He can go ahead and execute a report or an alarm request and kind of get a snapshot of what's going on in the system at that particular time. So I want to talk a little bit about the InTouch ME integration. What are the advantages of using our data source over the typical what our customers do now when they talk to when they configure InTouch ME with OPC. Well, the main thing I would say is that your alarms are configured and maintained in InTouch. You don't need to reconfigure the alarms within our application. You basically telling WIN-911 to connect to a project and pull those alarms out as they are configured. So if you change your message field over there, you change a tag name, those changes are reflected automatically in WIN-911 when you're using our alarm subscriptions. The next thing would be remote connections. You can connect WIN-911 to your InTouch ME projects from another machine. We're utilizing the TCP IP server that is hosted within an InTouch ME project. So once that's enabled, you can connect to it locally or remote. It's just a TCP server, and we're connecting through a TCP socket connection. You can monitor multiple projects. You're not limited to one InTouch ME project. You can monitor multiple. So if you want to monitor 3 different projects or 5 different projects with the single WIN-911 system, that's possible. You just define multiple projects when you're configuring the data source. Alarm subscription or filter-based alarming. What these allow you to do, this is how we bring alarms to within WIN-911. Instead of importing tags like you typically do, which we also support, but it's typically only used for reporting. But alarm subscriptions give you a dynamic connection into your InTouch ME application. We filter on different properties of an alarm, and I'll show you more about that in the next slide. But basically what we're doing is we set up a subscription that says give me all the alarms that maybe belong to this group or have this in their tag name, or only high priority alarms. There are a few different properties we can filter on with InTouch ME. Once you have those subscriptions set up, if you add new alarms to your project, then those alarms will automatically be caught by those subscriptions, assuming the alarms that you add match the subscriptions that you had previously set up. You also get remote interaction, meaning if you send an alarm out to an operator and they go ahead and acknowledge the alarm, then that acknowledgement will go to WIN-911 and then pass back through to InTouch ME. We also will log the WIN-911 acting user to InTouch ME, so you see that in an app comment. You would even see it. You can see that in your alarm summary within InTouch ME. So it says something like WIN-911 user and their notification type. So if it was email, it would say Steven dash email. You can also mention this earlier, request alarms or reports at any particular time with any one of our notification methods. And localization, if you are using a different language than English, that's totally fine. We support any language that you could have configured within InTouch ME. We also have localized our UI into 9 different languages if you do have a customer that requires it. So let's see. So here we go with the subscriptions. This is what it looks like in the software. We can filter on these 5 different properties. The first one is the alarm worksheet number or group number. I think people refer to it as a few different things. You see the screenshot on the right. That is from the PC demo application, which is what I'll be demoing later. Those numbers represent those groups or alarm worksheets. So you can create a subscription that subscribes to all of those or a single one. So maybe you want to create a subscription that only cares about alarms that are in group number 1 or only care about group 2. Or maybe you care about all 3, so you create 3 separate subscriptions so that you can send those alarms to 3 separate call out lists. So you're notifying different sets of people for those. Next are alarm messages or the description field. We can create, this is a string filter, so we can create a wildcard, or we can use contains, does not contains. Maybe you have some kind of unifying text within your message that will help you filter in alarms into WIN-911. Next is tag name. If you have a naming scheme within your tag names that is something that you can filter on, then you can use the tag name filter. Next would be priority. If you only want high priority alarms, so let's assume highest priority for you would be 0, then you can create subscriptions that only bring in high priority alarms because those are the only ones that need to be sent out. Or maybe you need to create 2 priority subscriptions, one for high priority that call out immediately, and then you have another one for lower priority alarms that have some kind of built-in delay to give the alarm enough time to clear before you actually send the notification. Last one is selection. The selection field can be used as a grouping feature. So if you have grouped your tags using the selection field, you can use that as a filtering technique too. I know that you can do custom alarm properties with or dot fields or whatever you want to call them, but we currently only support these properties for filtering. So you can use, but again, you can use any one of these, or you can use them together. So you can say, I only want alarms that belong to this group and have this priority. So you can combine them together. You don't have to just choose one. All right, so I want to talk about the dispatcher a little bit. So before we do that, I need to explain what a strategy and tactic are. If you remember, the dispatcher is the escalation engine for WIN-911. So alarms are things that have happened or what has happened. A strategy consists of policies of when WIN-911 is going to take action. And tactics are essentially call-out lists. That's a call-out list of people who are going to be notified for the alarm. So first I'll show you what a strategy looks like. Again, this is a group of policies that determine what WIN-911 is going to do given certain alarm states. So if I have an initial event, obviously I probably want to notify people. So the initial event will start a tactic, which again is a call-out list, and that will start notifying people. If the alarm state changes, what do I want the system to do? I can have it re-notify anyone that had been notified previously about the alarm. So if it does change, so maybe it goes from active to inactive and I want to update those operators, I can do that. Alarm becomes acknowledged, stop strategy. If I stop the strategy, that means I'm stopping notification. You can choose when to stop the strategies. So you can choose things like alarm becomes inactive. Maybe if the alarm's inactive, I no longer care about notification. If the alarm is acknowledged, then I can stop notification there. Or the other popular choice there would be alarm becomes terminal or normalized, which means it's inactive and acknowledged. And obviously, I don't want to send any more alarms at that or notifications at that point. There are other options in here. Another one could be or is upon repeating timer. If I maybe want to send a notification every 20 minutes or 30 minutes or every hour, I can do a re-notify there, or I could start a different tactic. If my first tactic, the people in my first tactic don't respond, I can have a second tactic that triggers after some amount of time, and I can notify those people as well. Maybe it's like a management group or supervisor group. I can use these repeating timers. There's also a single timer if you just want it to go one time, so you don't have to loop it over and over and over again. So tactics, again, are our call-out list, of which we have two types, a basic tactic and an advanced tactic. The basic tactic is the simple call-out list where you add people to it. You can move them up and down in the call-out list. You can use a delay before notification. So earlier I was talking about maybe you want to have a delay before you ever start sending anything to give the alarm time to clear. Once you start notifying, maybe you want to have delays between connections, so you can do that with delay after. You can configure retries that retry on a failure. So if you're trying to send an email and your email server is unavailable, then you can retry it. Retries are not for sending multiple notifications. If I wanted to notify Bob multiple times, then I would just put Bob in the list multiple times. If you're familiar with our version 7 product, then you may know that there were two different queues. There was a voice queue and a text queue, and so it was a little bit different. It was a little difficult to figure out how to get it to call in the correct order. But this basic tactic will call in the exact order that or notify in the exact order that you want. So if I want to send an email to Bob, then wait 5 minutes, send it to Alice, wait 5 minutes, send it to Joe, I can do that, and then it will make the phone call. In version 7, it would have made the phone call at the same time as it called Bob, which was, some people like that. I'd say most people did not like that. So these are basic tactics. You can create as many of these as you like. Advanced tactics are flowcharts. They are used to create dynamic escalation. You'll notice there are no one's names in this list. It's all using labels and roles. An alarm label is a way that you can group your alarms together. So when I define a subscription, I can tag every alarm that matches that subscription with a particular alarm label. So imagine I created a subscription and it was filtering for storage tank alarms. Every time an alarm would be caught by that subscription, it would be tagged with that alarm label. A role is very similar concept, but for connections themselves or contacts, email addresses, phone numbers. I can create these roles to represent any kind of grouping of the operators that I need to call. So in this example that we've got on the left, what we're doing is we start at the green dot and we come down to what we call a decision block. And we're checking to see if the alarm that has become active is a storage tank alarm. And if it is, we'll go to the right, but if it's not, then we'll go to the left, and nobody would get notified, which this is just an example. I probably wouldn't do that. You'd probably want to put somebody over on the left side to make sure somebody gets notified. But if it does go to the right, well, then what we're going to do is we're going to check the severity of the alarm. The severity scale within WIN-911 is 0 to 1,000. So if it's above 750, that would be high severity. If it's below that, it would be lower severity. So if it is high severity, we'll go to the right and immediately notify any contacts labeled or tagged with the water treatment plant operator role and the managers. So that's going to happen as quickly as possible. If it's lower severity, maybe I want to wait for it to clear. So I'll give it 10 minutes of a delay, and then I'll notify the operators. So again, you'll notice no one's name is in this list. So what that means is when you define contacts and you can add them to a particular role, and they're automatically inserted into your escalation without having to come and edit this. With a basic tactic, if you add a contact, you do have to go add it into the contact list. Whatever configuration will work for your organization is what I would say drives whether you're going to use advanced tactics or not. I would say typically the bigger configurations are utilizing advanced tactics, while the smaller configurations use basic tactics. But you can use both at the same time if you want. It's totally up to you when you are setting up your configuration. If you are interested in learning more about advanced tactics, there are webinars, recorded webinars up on win911.com that you can check out. So feel free to go watch any one of those. So next piece would be, to the dispatcher, would be scheduling. You need to create a schedule of when someone will be notified. When you create these schedules, you can assign them to individual contacts, or you can share a single schedule over multiple contacts. You can also use schedules within an advanced tactic as a decision block. So you can say if an alarm occurs at this time, branch out to the right. If it's not that time, branch out to the left. So a typical use case for that would be, I put in like a scheduled decision block that says if alarm occurs during normal business hours, notify the normal operators. Otherwise, notify whoever is labeled or has the role of on-call at that particular time. So then only the on-call operator is notified outside of normal business hours. This scheduling tool is very similar to any kind of Outlook calendar that you may have used, or maybe the Gmail calendar or Google Calendar, I should say. So if you can use one of those, then you can certainly use this tool pretty quickly. What's great about this over the previous scheduling tool that we had with version 7, it's very easy to create shift schedules or set up recurrences to push your schedule through the entire calendar. So it makes that process of creating schedules much easier. I'll show you in the live demo how to create a schedule so you can see that. So the last piece would be the notification methods or notifiers. The first one on the left is our mobile app. This is an iOS or Android mobile app. It does require the internet, so you have to put our mobile 911 server piece on a machine that is connected to the internet. Once an alarm occurs, WIN-911 sends it to that mobile server, and then that sends it over to the Android and Apple push servers, which then deliver it to your phone. And once it's on your phone, you can click on that notification and it will open up the app, and you can acknowledge the alarm or just view the details, or you can request other reports or alarms from within the app. This is our quickest notifier. It's very quick. When an alarm occurs, it shows up on your phone within a second or two. It's my preferred notification method just because it is so quick, and you don't have to wait for any send times like you do with maybe SMS, which is the next one. SMS, we're using cellular modems to send text messages. We are supporting and shipping Multi-Tech cellular modems. We've been using their modems for a number of years, and they've worked well for us. The way these cellular modems work is they can attach directly to your PC through a USB or a serial connection, and we are then looking at a COM port, sending out text notifications through that modem that you have defined there. We have a second type of modem that we now support. If you don't want to attach a modem directly to your PC, we have Ethernet-based or Ethernet-connected cellular modems that you can plug into a switch. And when you configure WIN-911, instead of defining a COM port, you're defining an IP address, and we'll open up a telnet session to that modem, and that's how we're sending and receiving text messages. So if you're in a VM environment where you don't want to pass hardware up to your host or to your VM, that would be a pretty good solution for that. So no more attaching the cell modems directly to the computer or workstation. Next one is voice calls, where we'll call you and verbalize the alarm details. There are two ways that we can accomplish that. The first one would be voice over IP. If you have a voice over IP system in at your plant or your office or wherever it may be that supports SIP. That's a protocol, SIP, which is a fairly standard protocol that almost every VoIP server supports. Then you should be able to use WIN-911 with that voice service. If you don't have an internal VoIP system, you can subscribe to a number of internet-based SIP or VoIP providers out there. Personally, the one I've been using a lot for testing and demoing is called SIP.us, SIP.us, which works well in the US and Canada. So it's fairly simple process to sign up for that and set it up. So if you want to check that out, and you might want to check their website out. So VoIP is one way to do it. The other way would be through a TAPI modem with an analog modem. This is a USB modem that you physically attach to your box. So this is we're shipping a multi-tech modem for that too. There's no way around that for a VM. It does have to be attached to a machine and passed up to your VM if you are running a VM server. Last one is email. This is a two-way email notification. So we'll send email out and you can reply to it to acknowledge alarms. We send mail through an SMTP server, and we receive mail through either POP or IMAP servers. I had said this was a two-way notification method, but all of these are two-way notification methods. They all give you the ability to acknowledge alarms. They all give you the ability to request alarms and request reports. So those are our notification methods. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and show you a live demo, and then we'll come back and do a Q&A session if you guys have any questions. So let me jump over to my system here. Okay, give me just a second. All right, let me jump into InTouch ME. So here we have InTouch ME running. Again, I'm running the PC demo, which ships with InTouch ME. So if you guys want to later on experiment with InTouch ME and WIN-911, you can follow along kind of with what I'm doing here. The way we connect to InTouch ME is through the TCP server that I mentioned that earlier. So if you want to connect through WIN-911 to the system, you have to make sure that it is turned on. You can see I have it set to automatic, which is the default behavior for the PC demo. So you need to make sure that you have that enabled. If you're using security, that's fine. You can use security, but you need to make sure that the group the user that you're going to be using has this option enabled for enable remote security system and remote debugging tools. If you don't turn that on, then we won't be able to connect. So it's pretty much all you have to do to make sure that WIN-911 can connect to this system. If you don't know what the port number for your TCP server is, you can find it in the communication tab, I believe. Yeah, right here. This is the default port for the TCP server, 1234. But if you're using something else, you can find it here to make sure you're typing it into WIN-911 correctly. In the demo, we've got 3 different alarm worksheets: alarms, industry water, and industry wind. What I'm going to demo for you guys is subscribing to each one of these as an individual subscription. So I'll create a subscription that pulls in these alarms, pulls in these alarms, pull in these alarms. And then I will send those to 3 different call out lists. And then we'll trigger an alarm and we'll ACK it, and so you can see how that works. So what we'll do is start the project. Go back to WIN-911. All right, so the project is running. Let's actually go to the alarm screen so you can see that. There are 2 different summaries here. One's pulling in alarms from one of those worksheets, and the other one, I believe this one pulls them in from the alarms worksheet, and this one pulls them in. Well, actually, I guess this is just a history, but you'll see there's a difference between them here in a second. Okay, So here is WIN-911. This is the UI for it. You'll notice it's in a web browser, which means you can access it remotely or locally, like we are right now. It is secured with Windows authentication, so when you first access it, you will have to type in a valid Windows user account and password. For this demo, I'm going to use email. We like to start when configuring WIN-911 for the first time. We like to go from left to right, so you would set up your contacts first. Then you would set up your escalation, and then you bring in your alarms. The main reason for that, you can go in any order that you want, I suppose, but it would be very difficult to set up a call out list or a tactic when you don't have any contacts set up. And it would be hard to set up your strategy if you don't have any call out list set up. And it would be hard to bring in your alarms if you don't have any strategies to assign those alarms to. So that's why we say to go from left to right. So every notifier is going to be split up into 3 different sections. The first section will be the gateway. The gateway is what shows you or allows you to connect to the outside world. So for email, that's going to be your email server settings. You can see I've got it set up to connect to an Exchange server that I have running. So we're sending through SMTP, and we've got it set up for incoming on POP. If you do download WIN-911 just to test it out, make sure that if you are going to use email, you're using a dedicated email account, because if you're using your personal email account to send and receive mail, we will delete the mail out of that account because it does some housekeeping on the inbox. And so don't use a personal email account. We even have a checkbox. You have to check to make sure that you understand that's what you would be doing. Once you have your gateway set up, you can set up your connections. I've already set them up previously, so I've got 5 people in here. Regardless of the notification type that you're doing, we've tried to make the setup process of a connection the same amongst all the notifiers. The first tab is a general tab where you're giving a name to your connection, so who it is. The description gives some context to what this connection's about. Maybe you can put Brian's work email or Brian's personal email, stuff like that. We obviously have to put an email address. If we were doing SMS, for example, or voice, you'd have to put in a phone number, so that will be different. You choose a schedule for this person to use. For all of these connections, I'm using always, and connection type is set to standard email. This is because if you want to send text messages as email, then you can do that, but we need to know that you're doing that if you want to reply to acknowledge alarms, because that changes the way we parse those incoming messages. So if you do email to SMS, choose this option. So if you want to acknowledge alarms with it. Earlier I was talking about roles and assigning roles to people. This is where you would do it. If I wanted to make this person an operator, I would choose that here. If I want to send a welcome message to this person, then that's going to send a message that tells that person how to interact with the system. Actually, what I'll do is, let me cancel this. And I've got Frank's inbox open here, so I'll send a welcome message to him. And then you'll see that message comes across. And it's a welcome message, talks about how to do acknowledgement, report requests, and alarm requests. So that's what that message is about. So the next tab would be alarm format. This is where you're choosing the format that you want to use. We have a bunch of built-in formats available, like maybe if you want a quick text one, or if you want to do HTML, you can choose one of the HTML ones. I've created a custom one. It's really not custom, but you can make your own formats too, to display the alarm information in any way that you would want. Next tab is report tab, or the report format. So you're choosing how you want your reports to show up when you send them out or request them. Next one is ACK options. This is where you can control whether this user can ACK alarms, and for email you can do ACK on any reply. So if I get an email, I just need to reply to it and it will acknowledge that alarm. I can do ACK with password, so I would have to type some text within the body of the email, and if I don't have that text in there, then the acknowledgement does not happen. Or I can say do not allow. The last tab, well, there's one more tab, but the last alarm related tab here is a way you can limit this particular connection's alarm request. So if let's say you were monitoring multiple projects and those projects had operators that had nothing to do with each other. You wouldn't want an operator from one system to request alarms and then get alarms from a totally different project that they don't care about. So if you are using labels in your subscriptions, you can say this user can only access alarms from one particular project. So when they do an alarm request, their response is being filtered down based on alarm label. So these are, I created alarm labels that are the same as the groups within InTouch ME. So there, if I save that, they would only get alarms from those three different groups. It's an optional thing. You don't have to do it. In fact, I'm not going to do it. And the last tab just shows you where you're using this particular connection. So I've got it saved in a tactic. That's why it's showing that there. Once you have, well, I'll show you the formats real quick. I mean, if you wanted to create formats, you do that here. It's in a language called XSL, which is XML. So we have some documentation about how to create those, but if you do have a custom format need that you're not sure how to do, just give our support team a call, and they'll create it for you. I did mention I'll show you how to do scheduling real quick. All those connections that I have are set to this always schedule, which means it's 24 hours a day all the time. If I wanted to create a schedule that's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m., then I would create a new one. I just click on the first day or one of the days that you want it to start on. I choose a start time and end time for this particular day. So I'm on the 30th for April. I would say I start at 8 a.m. I choose back on the 30th and choose 5 p.m. So now I've got, if I say OK, I've only created it for this one day, and I didn't give it a name either. I'll put on schedule. Which then you'd have to go one by one, which wouldn't be fun. So if you click this edit recurrence button, you can then choose which days you want it to repeat. And maybe this is a schedule that's only on schedule every other week. So I only want it to repeat every other week. So I changed that to 2. And I want it to persist forever. So I'll choose no end date. And when I click OK and click on OK, again, it will persist through the calendar forever because I set no end date. If there was a holiday that you know you're not going to send notifications to people, so let's see if you're on call, like here you go, here's Christmas Day. Maybe I don't want them to get a call on Christmas. I can delete just that one occurrence and delete that one too. So then I could use this as a shared schedule for everybody within the system. So that is how you create schedules. Next thing to do would be to create your call out list. For this, I'm just going to use basic tactics. I've got a tactic set up for the water and wind groups within InTouch ME. There's another group in there called alarms. So I'll create the alarms group tactic, and I will add one of our connections to that. So let's add Frank because I've got his inbox open, and we'll say OK. Well, if I wanted to notify Frank again, I can add him in again. If I want to add some other people, I can do that too. So you can see what that looks like. So maybe I want Jay to be after Frank. I just select him and move him around. If I want delays to go between connections, I can do that here. And I've got that delay before notification. And if I want to repeat this list when it gets to the end, I can use the repeat option here. So I'll save that. And the advanced tactics, I'll show you guys real quick what it looks like, but if you want more details on how you can use advanced tactics, I encourage you to check out one of those webinars that's on WIN-911.com. But if I wanted to, this is how I just want to show you guys how it works. If I wanted to say here, industry, if it checked to see if it's an industry's water alarm, if it is, then on the right side, I can put a single person if I want. So I could put like Brian in here, or I could put a role. So if I configure that, and I can say if it is one of these water alarms to notify my operators. If it's not a water's alarm, then I could check to see if it's another type of alarm. So maybe I'll check it to see if it's a wind alarm, and then I could drag another block on there, and let's say maybe I want to notify managers if it's wind alarms. And then on the left side, if it doesn't match any of them, I'd probably put some kind of notification here to make sure somebody gets notified for the alarm. So these are the advanced tactics. Again, check out the webinar if you want to see more about or more things you can do with it. So once you have your tactics, you have to set up your strategies. I created a wind strategy and a water strategy. So what I'm going to do is create the alarm strategy for that alarms group. So I'll type in the name for it. This is a basic strategy, which means you can choose which tactic you're going to launch. So I'll choose that alarms group tactic that I just made. And these are options that you can enable and disable. So if you're using voice, maybe you don't want re-notification on inactive or acknowledge alarms, you can turn that option on. If you want to auto-act alarms when they return to normal, you can turn that on. If you want to turn off re-notification on state changes, you can turn that off. If you want to go into advanced mode, which you have to have the advanced license for, then you can do that. And now this is what that screenshot I was showing you looks like. So with this saying, when I get an initial event, start that tactic. When it becomes terminal, which means it's normal and acknowledged, then go ahead and stop notification. If I want to add back in that any alarm state change re-notify, I can add it in. If I want to add in a re-notification every 10 minutes, I can add that in here. So let's see, upon repeating timer, I put in 20 minutes. And I could re-notify, or I could start another tactic. So you can see there are other options available. Again, that same webinar that talks about advanced tactics, we'll talk more about strategies too. So now that I've got this set up, I can save it, and now we can get to the last bit, which is to set up the alarming. So if I go into my InTouch ME deal, I will set up some subscriptions. So if I create my first subscription for that alarms group, we'll call it alarms group subscription. It bothers me it's not capitalized. It's still not capitalized. There we go. So these are the options that you can filter on. I know that the alarms group is worksheet number 1. So if we look back here, we see that's the 1, and that's for alarms. The next one is water, and the next one's wind, and they're 2 and 3. So I'll create subscriptions for those two. I created those labels, so I might as well attach the labels to these alarms too. So I'll attach any alarm that matches a subscription with that alarms label, and then I click save. And I would create the other two. This would be the Industries Water subscription, and I know that is group number 2, so I'll type in 2. And then last one was Industries Win, and I'll filter on number 3. I forgot to add a label to that other one, so let's say OK to this one. I'll come back in here and edit this one. One thing I'll say about the configuration, everything's runtime all the time. So when I hit the save button, those changes take effect immediately. You don't have to restart anything to make your change take effect. So I have these subscriptions set up, but I'm still not using them because I have not applied them to any project because I don't have my project defined yet. And you know what? Let me just show you how. I'm only using one of these filtering techniques, but if I wanted to say I only want alarms out of this group and it has to be a high priority, so if 0 is my high priority, these things are ANDed together. So it's going to say has to be in this group and it has to be a 0 or 1 or 2 or 3 priority. So that is how you can use you could technically use all of them if you wanted to be really specific about which alarms you want to pull in. Once you have your subscription set up, you can create your project. So I'm going to add a project in here. The name is whatever you want. I'll just type PC demo because that's what the project's called in InTouch ME. you have to put where the server, where the InTouch ME project is running. It's running on the same box, so I'll type localhost. This is that TCP server port, which is 1234. I can hit the test connection button to see if I can connect to it. If I was using security, I would turn that on and I would type in the user that I want to use for security. The next tab is a health alarm. This will tell you if your connection to InTouch ME is working. If it's not working, this alarm becomes active, and you can type anything you want into this box to change the description of it. You can choose which strategy it's going to go to, which will determine who's going to be notified for this particular alarm. You might want to create like an admin strategy that sends it to whoever the administrator for the facility is, so they can come and check out why the thing is not connected. Next tab is for watchdog alarms. These watch tags for changing values. So if, let's say you have a tag within a PLC that you're watching for a changing value, if it doesn't change value within some timeout period, which is like 90 seconds, then that alarm becomes active. So you can use watchdogs to monitor a variety of different assets or PLCs or whatever it may be. I don't have anything set up to watch for watchdog, so I won't set that up. And the last tab is for subscription routes. This is where you assign those subscriptions we made to a project. So we'll add the first one, and we'll say we created that alarms group subscription, and that's going to be sent to our strategy for alarms. So we'll choose the alarm strategy. So we'll add the next one for water, and that will go to the water strategy. We'll add the next one, which is for wind, and then we'll make sure it goes to the wind strategy. Now when I hit save, what's going to happen is it's going to connect to InTouch ME and start bringing in alarms and start sending them out. So if I hit save, it is now going to connect, and if we go to the log viewer, it's going to start bringing the alarms in as they are in this guy here. So this is the analog alarm low. Oh, I hate this start menu. But of course it doesn't appear to be bringing them in for some reason. Let me double check to make sure I didn't change anything. Alright, that's fine. That's fine. Make sure it's not my subscription, so what I'll do is change this one to all alarms. I think maybe I'm just not connected to it. Oh no, I'm just not impatient, I suppose. Oh no, there's something wrong with my subscription because it's catching the all alarm subscription and sending it to the alarm strategy. What is it that it doesn't like though? Okay, now this one's working. So if I click on one of the alarms, I can see the notifications that are being sent out. So this one for wind is being sent to Frank. So if I go to Frank's inbox, I can see I've already sent a bunch of emails to him. If I go to one of them, this most recent one, this analog one, if I want to acknowledge it, I just have to reply and hit send. WIN-911 checks the inbox every minute, so on average you have to wait about 30 seconds for the acknowledgement to come in. So if we open it up and we go look at the acknowledgement tab, when it does get acknowledged, this will update with Frank acknowledging it, which is not the most exciting thing to wait for, but we'll wait for it anyway. Oh, I'm sorry, I acknowledged the wrong alarm. I was looking at the wrong alarm. So this is Frank email acknowledge it. If I go to back to InTouch ME, I can see my comment says Frank email is the alarm comment, and you can see it is acknowledged here. Come on. If you want to see which notifications are being sent out without having to click into each alarm, you can click on the notifications tab, and you can see as the alarms come in which notifications are being sent out for a particular alarm. So that is how you would set this up. What I'll do now is I'll jump back to the PowerPoint and let's see if you guys had any questions, and then we'll go from there. Before I get to the questions, so if you do have any, if you do want to see those webinars, you can see them under the resources tab. You can see the webinar series. There's some how-to videos for other modules. I know there's not one for the InTouch ME module just yet, as we just released it about a week ago. There is documentation, a quick start guide for setting up InTouch ME that you can find with the download of WIN-911, which if you do want to download it, it is fully functional for 30 days. So to download it from win911.com. If you need a demo extension, just let us know and we'll send you a demo extension. So what we'll do is take some questions. I know there's I think there's at least one here. And will the webinar be uploaded? Yeah, it will. So this webinar will be uploaded to the website like the other ones. In that previous slide, it is literally resources webinar series. I don't know when it will be posted there. It will be in a day or two. You should be able to see it up there, and then you can watch it over and over again, since it was incredibly entertaining. If you guys have any questions, let me know. You can shoot me an email or give me a call. If you have sales questions, go ahead and give a call to the sales department, and they can answer any questions about pricing. If you have any feedback about the product itself, just let me know. If there are some things that you'd like to see changed about the data source or any part of WIN-911, please let me know, and we can discuss what your particular use case to make sure that we are creating a product that you guys want to use. So with that, if there are no other questions, then I guess we'll go ahead and end the webinar. And again, if you guys have any questions later on, feel free to reach out to me or our sales department, sales@win911.com, or myself, Steven Rivas. So thanks again for everybody joining the webinar, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.